We'll be just going over our statistics for environmental code. We continue to see increased levels of enforcement in our community. That is, our trending data is looking good as far as our current fiscal year. We are implementing some sound decision making based on, again, our InterGov software system, as well as looking at where our complaints come in from residents. And again, really trying to work with residents on improving voluntary compliance. Obviously, that's our preferred method of compliance. Nobody, our staff is ready to write citations or contract properties, but again, really what we're trying to do is educate the public as well as work with the public to resolve issues. So we'll go over the information and then go over some examples of what our code officers see out in the field, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. But if there's any questions throughout the presentations, don't hesitate to stop me. For our first quarter, we do see an increase of proactive. Again, these violations are identified proactively. So we have seen this first quarter about a 12.6% increase over identifying violations. We've done a few what I would say targeted sweeps, which is where we identify an area that is a problem area, and then we send multiple code officers to go in and work those areas. Right now, during the second quarter, we're actually working a major sweep of a neighborhood, so you can anticipate probably next quarterly report you're going to see a rather big jump. But as far as using that information within our system to make sound resource deployment decisions is why you see an increase. We're working as a team and really looking at identifying those. We did see a slight increase as far as complaints, 5.7, and a lot of those came in on the next slide. You're going to see the month-to-month breakdown. But regarding what I anticipate or interpret the information is that we had a later, as far as a lot of rain in the late summer. So we did see some growth as far as in the first quarter. So I think that's where in October we saw a little bit of a jump. Properties contracted, we're down 3.3%. But as Debbie indicated, this time of year is a calm before the storm because our number one violation, as I've said in the past, is vegetative in nature. So we definitely anticipate when springtime comes that this number will go up. I wouldn't say dramatically, but it will definitely increase. In the citations, we've seen a healthy growth as far as a tool of compliance. We've seen a close to 20% increase. This fiscal year, we have fully implemented and fully have our staff where we're working different shifts. So we actually have 2 code officers that come in at 10 o'clock and they work till 7 o'clock. So their primary violation that they're looking for is catching people parking on unapproved surfaces. They'll also relay any type of major code violations to the staff while they're working these various areas. But I attribute a lot of our citation increase has been really because of those staff members going out and finding that violation. And we're really working outside the 8 to 5 area because, as many of you know, that violation usually occurs after hours. So we're trying again to use the staff that we have in a creative way to see results in the community. This is a month-to-month breakdown, as I indicated. You could see exactly how our activity is
Mr. Rivas,
from month to month.
We have a question.
I'm sorry.
I have a quick question before we move on.
Sure.
Unapproved surface. What is that considered? What is an unapproved surface?
It's going to be primarily parking on the yard, but that also includes something that, for instance, it has not been previously permitted. Something that we talk to residents in older parts of our city is they might have a makeshift gravel lot adjacent to either their side yard or they've tried to extend their driveway, but it's been done without a permit. Our building inspections division has very strict requirements regarding any type of extension of a driveway, for instance. So our staff looks for those instances when it does not meet both building code and then our code regarding that violation.
Okay, and my second question is, does that also include commercial area too?
Yes, our staff works in commercial areas. Now, there is we work very closely with BI as far as if there's a question, there might be some type of a reason or a variance that we've allowed for being able to park. Again, our violations that our staff have to observe have to be from the public view. So if it's a commercial area that, for instance, is screened, then that's something that we normally will not write a citation unless we've received a complaint.
But if it's out in the front of and if it's out right out in the open in the front of the building, and someone's parking on the grass area instead of in the parking lot area, that would be considered unapproved?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
As we move forward, one thing that I would like to point out is that as our InterGov information, the data that we collect starts to mature, we'll actually show multiple years of information. These last few years, I've really just been doing a year-to-year comparison. But as far as complaints, the way that we collect that information, I'm able to show a 3-year trend. So as you can see, we did have that anomaly that I alluded to for October. But regarding complaints in general, we start to see a decline. And that shows that our staff is going out there trying to catch the violation before the residents in neighborhoods report those to us. So again, this is an example of us using information to really do our jobs better as far as code enforcement goes. Another indicator that we've seen an improvement on is our average day to open to close. This year this previous quarter, we're at 21 days. And this is a slight improvement over our last year's year-to-date numbers. So, again, staff is working aggressively to not only identify them, but also be effective in the way that they handle code cases. So our supervisors monitor our staff, and again, probably our next quarterly update will show, and again, I'm trying to also convey some trending information that I anticipate. This number might slightly tick up due to that more aggressive and larger span sweep that we're currently doing. When we work a larger area, we work with residents is our number one method. So you can anticipate anywhere a slight uptake because we allow 30 to 60 days on some violations. So we want to give residents time to work those. Again, our voluntary compliance, we actually saw an increase. We're at 91%. We finished the year last year in the high 80s. And for this first quarter to have 91%, this is something that I think is something to be proud of. That's where we've allowed residents to really resolve issues on their own. 4% of our work that we do, we contract, and 5% as far as citations. As far as citations go, we issued about 333 citations in the first quarter. As far as dismissed by prosecutors, something that I've explained in the past is anywhere from 10 to 12%, maybe 13% is normal for us. As they go through our municipal court system, our prosecutors work with residents to not only resolve issues. Let's say, for instance, we wrote a citation and they resolved the issue rather quickly. Then sometimes our prosecutors will work with them. So as far as this is an average number that I think we can anticipate and healthy as far as the numbers go. Again, a number of in progress, and that's due to the fact that it does take a little bit of time to work through the municipal court system. This gives you everybody an idea as far as our top 4 violations. This quarter, it's actually a little bit different. Trash, junk, and debris has a slight uptick over high grass and overhanging limbs, which is usually our number 1 and number 2. This is mainly because this time of year we don't have a lot of high weeds and grass, so this is a time of year where we really focus on property conditions. So that's why you see nuisance premise and trash, junk, and debris being at higher numbers. It's a cyclical type process as far as violations go. But so that you have the information, that's the violations that are top 4 in this previous quarter. The next few slides are some examples of some code cases where we've worked with a number of departments to help resolve issues. Standing water is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And this above-ground pool was identified, and we actually worked with Solid Waste, was able to provide some dirt after we contracted the property to really show what, or to see what you, or let me start over again. To really achieve what you see here was a collaborative effort between our contractor, staff, and Solid Waste to provide some dirt to fill what was removed. But again, this is a time of year where we really want to catch this type of violation, because you don't want, as we move into the rainy season and you start seeing an increase in mosquitoes, we want to catch this before it really becomes a health issue for residents. Landscape and vegetation, this is some work that we're doing in the Northridge area. And again, this is an education process for residents. Sometimes they're not aware that their responsibility is to maintain to the halfway point of that easement. So this is one where we've worked with the resident to really cut back some of the overhanging limbs in that area, and then also to fill in some of those collection points for water. So again, not only are we looking at pools, but we're also looking at where standing water might take place. So again, this is an example of a landscape and vegetation issue that we work on a regular basis in our neighborhoods, primarily our older neighborhoods. Well, another example of overhanging limbs would be when we talk to Matt's staff and they say, well, we're trying to get our trash trucks in through these alleys, and we ran across an issue. And this is something that was reported by Solid Waste. We went out, took a look at it. Ultimately, we removed that tree so that we can hopefully prevent any type of damage to any type of city equipment that's going through those alleyways. So this is a regular ongoing process where we work with Solid Waste that are in and out of those areas, well, not probably, but are in those areas a lot more often than we might be. So again, it's a team effort. Our code ambassadors, we do see, again, they have a lower compliance rate from our code officers because the time that they work their cases is much smaller than a code officer. So we see about a 13.34% compliance rate. We did see volunteers give about 132 hours of their time. They work weekends and Tuesdays and Thursdays. So again, they really look for those more common violations so that staff can focus on larger issues. We had a mandatory continuing education class for ambassadors this last quarter. So to just ensure that their training is up, our code officers have to go through a number of continuing education hours. And again, I try to develop and design this program to mirror a lot of what our code officers do. So we require some annual continuing ed for those code ambassadors. We actually had a new class start on February 21st, and I'm excited to say that we have about 14 folks in those classes right now. So this would be actually one of our larger code ambassador courses. They are very enthusiastic, so we look forward to early April is when that graduation would be, and then look forward to their work that they will be able to help provide to our staff. So we look for great things from them. And a quick update as far as the vacant property maintenance program. This is a program, again, where if a vacant tract is a problem where we've had to contract it twice after we've sent a notice to maintain letter to the property owner, then we put that on a perpetual maintenance program where we require the landowner or property owner to come with us with a plan on how they're going to resolve that, how they're going to take care of that moving forward. So right now we have about 99 properties on automatic maintenance. I continue to see a decline in the number of complaints submitted to my department when it comes to vacant properties. This isn't only, as you can see, residential, but it also includes commercial, industrial, and agricultural. Each one of those properties, regardless of zoning, does have requirements to maintain their property. And this can also include not only high weeds and grass, but if we have a lot of illegal dumping or a lot of trash and junk and debris, then that would qualify it to go on perpetual maintenance. So again, I think that this is a program that ultimately has helped us better align not only our contractors' efforts, but also our staff efforts. So again, this year, it's a growing database. We have added, just in the last 3 months, 16 properties, but I wouldn't be surprised if we've had some come off, and probably since I put this together, we've probably added a few more. So again, this is something that we not only get information through utility billing as far as an indicator that it might be vacant, but it's out there with our staff observing the conditions of properties. And again, it's really I say that I have the easiest job because I get to brag on them, but they're the ones out there really working, trying to look for ways to meet your goal as far as community appearance and conditions. So that's all that I have. I'd be happy to entertain or answer any questions.
Mr. Burrows.
Yes, sir. You said we have 99 properties that are on the reoccurring maintenance list.
Yes, sir.
So for how long will they stay on there before we can start the next process is it forever or
no, actually
the
the way that the program is designed, we have to abide by state statutes. We actually utilize a part of the state health code which states that within a calendar year, if you observe a similar violation to one that has previously been noticed, then you can remedy that issue for that calendar year. But it only applies to certain violations. Again, high weeds and grass, trash, junk, and debris. Something like overhanging limbs, we would have to start a code case for that. So as far as we look for just basic nuisance issues as defined by the state, and then that's when we can remedy it. It has to restart every year. So as a property might get to that year anniversary, we have to rescind the notice to maintain, and then we have to observe 2 code violations. So it's almost from where you're sitting, it looks like it's ongoing, almost automatic. But there are things going on behind the scenes that our staff has to do to ensure that that automatic maintenance program is in place.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if it happens this year, we have high weeds and we're having to constantly go out there and send someone to mow, and then the next year we're having to do the same thing over. Is it just a continuous for every year? Is there a stop to it?
Now, are you talking about vacant properties, or are you talking about properties that might be
anything? I guess my question is anything that we have to reoccurring maintenance that we're having to take care of and put on this property. How many years do we let it go before something can actually be done to stop to where, I know that we go out and we have to pay to our contractors and we put a lien against the property. How many years do we keep this going before we say, okay, enough's enough?
So what we do is we look at how much money as far as liens go that are placed against a property. And what we do is we try to find a good number. If it starts to exceed a certain amount, then we would start working with the attorney's office. Some of these are on T25 lists, so we would start the foreclosure process, and then we would look at obtaining that property and then look at possibly selling it at a future date to recoup any type of costs.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Appreciate it.
Councilman Archer?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rivas, thank you for the hard work you and your folks do every day to keep our neighborhoods cleaner. Where would you say our staffing is at the moment in terms of code officers? We catching up a little bit?
Well, we have 9 code officers. We have what I feel like right now. I'm doing an analysis as with our GIS department, our geographic spatial information system right now. And what I do is I look at the number of code violations that we've identified. I look at complaints, and then I look at general landmass that each staff member has to be responsible for. And that would also include any type of number of structures that they would be, again, assigned. So right now I'm in the middle of that analysis. I think that we have a good staffing right now. Obviously, as we add staff, it would make our workload a little bit smaller for each code officer, and it would shrink that geographical area. But again, that information is something that I would meet with Mr. Kahili on, and then look at any subsequent budget offers for additional staff. But as far as what we have right now, I think that we're at a fairly good number.
And I just meant sort of day to day right now in terms of sometimes we may lose people or different things like that. Are we kind of caught up in terms of if we've lost anybody, got rehired, got new people trained?
Sure. So one of my priorities when I took over was changing the culture within code to really make it a team atmosphere and really convey what my expectations, what your expectations are of my staff. So we have a really good team. I would say that we had a high attrition rate when I first started. But as far as this year, we haven't lost any staff. It's a fairly desirable department to work in, actually. And then we're doing ongoing internal training. For instance, in a sweep that we're doing right now, we took some of our solid waste personnel to shadow us so that they could start to see for violations that we're looking for. And it just so happens that's usually somebody, a department, whenever we have an opening, it's usually solid waste employees applying for code jobs. So we're trying to do some cross-training as well between departments.
How's our home program going?
Our home program, this time of year,
some dollars left?
We have I would say a limited amount of funds in there. Again, it's donation based. Yolanda, our manager of neighborhood vitality, is currently working on some fundraising, working with our communications and marketing staff to develop some flyers to help us as far as send out to potential donors to see if we can't increase that coffer as far as dollar amounts. We do continue to see submittals for home from our code officers. A lot of them are vegetative, so we can get volunteers to really address a lot of those issues. So we're putting off any type of major, like, if it needs protective treatment like painting or anything like that, we're putting off projects like that until we have some funding.
Now, you said donations. Do we put some CBDG funds into that?
We do have a separate pot of money that we have that's, I try not to confuse it because it is different pots of money and there's different funding requirements or requirements to use those fundings. We do have a small amount of money that we've set aside for CDBG home. But again, one of the major limiting factors of utilizing that is that an applicant has to qualify as far as income goes for those funds. So our staff have to look at various requirements to ensure that we're using the right funding stream to fund those home programs.
That CBDG funding for home is separate from our rehab program.
Correct, yes. So actually, on the CDBG side, you have emergency repairs, you have home rehab, and then you have this separate pot of money for things that would qualify that come out of our home process from code officers.
Occasionally we come across, as I've dealt with Mr. Kahili and you, with situations where we have a senior or someone who's ill and they just, they're very much out of compliance, but they just cannot or unable to do what they need to do. But there's some serious lifting that has to be done for their residents. Do we know about how many of those that we have that right now we're not able to take care of it without a home, or it's a bigger job than just a few volunteers? Do we know about how many of those we might have? Because I know we have a few.
That's something that, if you don't mind, maybe I could do a memo, just a general update of our home program, and provide statistics and numbers like that for you. I don't have the information today.
Sure, that's fine. I just know sometimes we run into that, and it's a struggle for all of us because we want to help, and they need the help, and we just don't know what to do sometimes. How's our weekend and nights enforcement going? Or I know we don't necessarily do nights, but do we ever extend that a little bit later than 5 o'clock? Or? Sure.
So what we do is we have code officers. We have 2 code officers that come in at Monday through Friday. They come in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then they work till 7 in the evening.
Good.
They go out, and again, their number one violation that they're looking for is parking on an unimproved surface. We have 2 staff members, and they alternate. One person comes in a little bit later so that we can have somebody looking for that same violations on the weekends. But we have 2 staff members assigned to weekends looking for parking, not only parking, but also general code violations. And then it's not uncommon for me to get an email or text about something that's observed throughout the community, and I can assign that to the weekend staff to look into.
I know Mr. Kahila and I have discussed from time to time with various neighborhoods where kind of beyond just code violations, occasionally some dilapidated homes or some homes that really have some serious structural damage or issues to them, where there's some need for building standards and our building inspectors to collaborate with y'all. How's that going, and is that more of a reactive place right now for us as we progress, or is there some day-to-day cooperation too there? Or?
So right now we're doing I would say, a comprehensive sweep of a neighborhood, and that not only involves code enforcement. We have building inspections, we have animal services, we have the police department, and then we have solid waste staff. So we have 5 divisions within the city that really go in and do this comprehensive sweep. So I would say that we do our best. We can't do those often. I would say that if I had to estimate, we could probably accommodate a comprehensive sweep like that once a quarter, because it does take a number of weeks and months to follow up on those. But to answer your question, yes, we do comprehensive sweeps that involve multiple departments, and it really highlights the collaboration that takes place as far as enforcement.
And I know that it couldn't be easy day to day, because I know our building inspectors have a whole lot of other stuff that they're doing across the board with apartments and other things, but I was just kind of curious to how that's going. But
sure. So
good
BI has 2 inspectors that they utilize, or they give us to do those sweeps. Yes, we try not to make it a burden, so we try to do those that usually it's done within a week or 2.
Well, good work, and I appreciate what your folks are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council, any other questions? Well, thank you, Mr. Rivas. Thank you for that. And like you said, we're right now at the calm before all the growth that takes place, and it's getting ready to happen. So appreciate the work that you're doing, and great statistics you've been giving us.
Okay.
So thank you so much.